Coin on.
Hey there, YouTube coin community. It's Dustin with CoinOp, and today we are going to take a look at coin grading Jefferson nickels. So let's dive right on in. Okay, when it comes to coin grading Jefferson nickels, there are a few things that you want to take into consideration, and mostly when you get into your higher grades, your AUs to uncirculated examples. Now with coin grading is done on a scale of 1 through 70, where 1 being the absolute poorest and 70 being perfect flawless. MS 60 through 70 is uncirculated. 58 through 1 has been circulated. Now with Jefferson nickels, there is what's known as a full steps, and then there's without full steps. Full steps is a lot more scarce. Now the steps wear pretty quickly, so it's pretty much with the uncirculated examples and some of the higher circulated examples. But even during the minting process, the steps don't fully strike out, so they can be pretty scarce and they do carry a higher value. So when you're looking at a price guide or any place for value, you're going to see just regular prices for, let's just say, a 1939, and then you're also going to see underneath of it values listed for, say, 1939 full steps or FS. So that way you know the difference between the two, because full steps do carry more value. All right, so let's dive on in and take a look at some coin grading. Okay, we are going to start with good 4 or G4. Now good 4 is a very low grade. Now, there are a couple lower grades, but in the price guides or any place that you're looking up value, this is about the lowest grade you are going to be able to find values for. Now, when you are looking at a Jefferson nickel that has been graded good or G4, you are going to see considerable flatness all over the entire coin. It is not going to show very much detail at all. When you are looking at the obverse of the coin, Jefferson's head is not going to really show any hair detail whatsoever, maybe only in the deepest recesses and points of the hair design. You're not going to be able to see the shoulder line on the shoulder. It's going to just be overall pretty flat, and some of the letters might even be worn into the rim. Now, taking a look at the reverse, the Monticello building is going to be pretty much worn entirely away. You might be able to see some of the outlines of the columns on the reverse. Otherwise, you're not really going to see much detail whatsoever. And again, some of the letters might even be worn into the rim. Now we are taking a look at a VG8 or very good 8 example. This is a little bit of a step up from a G4. Now on a VG8, it's going to show a little bit more detail than a G4. None of the letters should be worn into the rim whatsoever, but it is still going to have considerable flatness. There's still going to be a lot of wear on Jefferson's head, on his shoulder. You might be able to see a little bit more of the hair detail coming out. When you're taking a look at the reverse, again, none of the letters should be worn into the rim at all. Some of the columns might start to show just a little bit. It's still going to have considerable flatness. Okay, we are moving on to a fine condition, a fine or F12 example. Now, when you were looking at a fine grade, overall, it's going to have a lot more detail, and wear is going to show on the highest points of the coin, but there's going to be a lot of it on the higher points. Overall, all the major elements of the design will remain. Now, when you are looking at the obverse at Jefferson's profile, on his hair, towards the top of his hair, it's going to be considerably flat, but going back towards the braid, it's going to have a lot of detail. You should start to be able to make out a lot of the hair detail, but you're still going to see some flatness and wear points. On his shoulder, it's going to show most of the shoulder. There might still be some flat points, and some of the shoulder might not show all of the lines. When you were taking a look at the reverse of the coin, the columns should start to show through. It's still going to have overall a lot of flatness, but even on top of the columns, the triangle will start to show through. You should be able to see it and be able to make it out, even though a lot of the edges of it are going to be pretty well worn. Okay, now we are moving on to a very fine, or VF20, very fine 20. We are taking a look at a very fine 20 example. Overall, this is going to have much more detail than a fine example would. And when you are looking at this, wear is pretty much only going to show on the highest points. There's going to be a lot more hair detail. There's still going to be some flat points in wear towards the top of Jefferson's head, maybe a little bit on the back by the braid, and a few wear spots might show on his face as well, maybe around his eye. When you are taking a look at the reverse, the columns will be visible. A lot of the details in the gable will start to show. The triangle above the columns will show a lot more detail. Now, some of the edges on it might still be worn, but for the most part, it will show most of its detail. Overall, it will show a lot more detail than a fine grade example would. Now we are moving on to an extremely fine example, or an EF40 or XF40, depending on the coin grading company. They do write it different ways. Some of the coin companies will put XF on the holder, and some of them will put EF on the holder, but both of those mean extremely fine. Now, overall, on an extremely fine graded Jefferson nickel, it's going to show wear only on pretty much the highest points of the coin. Some of the mint luster might start to show through, not usually, but sometimes it does. Now, most of the detail on Jefferson's hair will show, but again, only the high points of his hair, basically up by the top of his forehead. There will be a couple flat spots, maybe back towards the back by his braid. There might be some flat spots. And on his cheek, below his eye, there might be some flat spots. But when you're looking at his shoulder, it should have all of the shoulder lines. And when you are taking a look at the reverse, all of the details should be showing through. Now, the steps will probably still be pretty worn. Some of the steps might show through. Even on some uncirculated examples, the steps won't show. But for the most part, most of the details will be there. There will be some wear spots up towards the top of the Monticello building, maybe around where the triangle is, and down on the foundation line on the building will start to show through. It still might be pretty well worn. Now we are moving on to an AU50, or about uncirculated. AU50. Now, taking a look at an AU50 example, this will show some of its mint luster. A lot of its mint luster will still show through. Even though this coin has been in circulation, it's only been lightly circulated. So only wear shows on the highest points. So maybe on the top of the head, a little bit on the cheek, might be a spot or two on the shoulder. But overall, the coin will just be a very nice, appealing, circulated coin. On the reverse, again, it's going to show a lot of its detail, and only wear will show on the highest points. So there might be a couple spots on the top of the building, maybe on the foundation line, but otherwise everything should be showing through pretty nice, and it should have some of its original mint luster. Now we are taking a look at an MS60. This is an uncirculated coin. This is the bottom of the scale for uncirculated. Now, an uncirculated coin typically has never seen circulation, hence why they call it an uncirculated. and it should be the way it was when it left the mint. Now, even though a coin has just left the mint, they still do get bagged up. They're mixed in with other coins. They can get dinged around. They can get moisture on them. All different kinds of things can come into play. So uncirculated examples will still have bag marks and little nicks and dings. Some of them will have uneven toning. So when taking a look at an MS60 example, it typically will have lots of bag marks, lots of little nicks and dings. A lot of them will be in some of the prime focal points. A lot of times it'll have an uneven toning, but it will strictly be an uncirculated coin. Now we are taking a look at an MS63. And the MS63 is a much nicer uncirculated example. It still will have bag marks or little contact marks throughout it, but mostly not in the prime focal areas. There still might be a few in the prime focal areas, but nowhere near as many as on an MS60 example. It still might have some uneven toning as well. Now we are taking a look at an MS65 example. When you get to MS65 and above, this is where the coins really truly become aesthetically pleasing. They should have a very nice strike, a lot of beautiful mint luster to it. There shouldn't really be any uneven toning, and there should be no bag marks or nicks and dings or blemishes in the prime focal areas. There might still be a few on an MS65 example, but not in the prime focal points of the coin. But overall, they will just be a very aesthetically pleasing coin, and they only get better the higher they go from this point. So there you go. Bonus coin. Now, I know this is a coin grading video and I wasn't really showing off coins, but while I was doing research for this video, I ended up coming across this beautiful 1939 Jefferson nickel with the reverse of the 1940, and this one was graded by pcgs in an MS68 full steps holder. Now, I found this over at Heritage Coin Auctions in their past auction archives. Now, this Jefferson nickel sold for $23,500. $23,500. Now, overall, this is just a beautiful coin. It has amazing toning. It just looks to me as if it was album kept for a very long time before it was ever graded holdered. Overall, the coin is just amazing. It has a very nice centered strike. It has just some beautiful natural toning on both the obverse and the reverse. It has nice, beautiful full steps, and it's just overall, it is just a really beautiful example of a 1939 Jefferson nickel. And I figured, why not show it to you as well? So there you go. There's a Jefferson nickel that sold in auction for $23,500. Well, everyone, we hope you enjoyed this video. We definitely hope it helps you along your path to grading your Jefferson nickels, especially when you're trying to figure out value on them. If you enjoyed this video, do us a huge favor and hit that thumbs up button. The more you hit the thumbs up button, the more it encourages YouTube to share our content with more and more people. Also, by subscribing, the more subscribers, the merrier. And while you're at it, click on that bell. That way you get notified immediately when we upload new content. Well, everyone, until next time, have fun.